in charge here?
Claw's our master. Claw chooses who will go and who will stay.
Hey, howdy, hey, toys of all walks of life. Wolfman 47 Dash here. I would have gone through the whole list of toys, but I'd be here forever if I did. And also the hey, howdy, hey greetings from Woody from Toy Story. That's where I got my greeting from. So, all that aside, and before you go into the comment section thinking I'm gonna be very critical of the endings to all the Toy Story films and all that, please don't, because I'm actually not going to talk about the endings of the Toy Story films. In fact, I think they're all good in their own right. The issue I do have, however, is how Pixar feel they need to continue the franchise with Toy Story 5. So first of all, let me just say what I think of each film. So starting with the first one, Toy Story 1, released in 1995, and was the very first feature-length film to be completely all CGI, with no sign of live action or traditional animation elements. Of course, this was released during a time when Pixar was simply known as a production company. They weren't the animation studio that they are today, and it was a huge success for both Pixar and Disney, leading to Toy Story 2, which was their third film as part of their deal with Disney, and that was released about 4 or 5 years later, 1999. And despite some behind the scenes shenanigans going on from a certain CEO of Disney at the time, and other reasons, that was also a critical and commercial success. My personal favourite has always been the second one. I did like the first one, especially the sort of elements it had for adults and all that. But I like the second one more because it's got a bit more heart to it, and it sort of answers the question what will happen, how the toys would feel if their owner grew up and sort of outgrew over them or whatever. However the story goes, and it's a good message that they sort of talk about there. Then about 10 years later, we get Toy Story 3. Which feels like a welcome addition to the franchise, bringing their saga with Andy to a close. And as you all know in the film, they do remove a lot of toys that were featured in Toy Story 2 for various reasons. I think some of the big reasons were the cast and crew, the cast of the toys either having died at that point or were unavailable at the time, which was the case for Bo Peep. More on her in a bit. And the one exception they made to that rule was Slinky. Now, Slinky's voice actor did the role in the first film and the second film. In the third film, he had to be recast because the original voice actor died. And I think the exception. And I think he was the exception to the rule because he was one of the core main major characters, and they decided they just couldn't get rid of Slinky, so they decided to hire a new actor to voice him and basically just mimic the character. And funny enough, the actor they picked actually turns out to have known the original actor who did Slinky. Toy Story 3 felt like a satisfactory, conclusive, this is the end kind of ending. And because at the end, spoiler alert, Andy gives his toys away to Bonnie before going on to college. Bring on the fourth film, which for a lot of people felt an unnecessary thing, but once you really watch it and get into it, you kind of realise that actually they did sort of mention Bo Peep in the third film, and they need to provide closure on where she is there. And that's what they did with Toy Story 4. Personally, I felt it could have been called a different name, like William Bo Peep, but bear in mind this was released during a time where Disney felt they needed to have films like Frozen 2 and Toy Story 4 and others be named like that to get people going in, rather than give it a more accurate title, because Frozen 2 is a very Elsa-centered film with the other characters sort of being on the sidelines, and Toy Story 4 is a very Woody and Bo Peep centered film with the other toys in the sidelines. Yes, Buzz Lightyear does have a major role, and whereas the others feel kind of sidelined compared to the previous films where they did have like a sort of supporting / major role, especially in Toy Story 2 and 3 where all the toys were moving from, where all or most of the toys were moving from place to place, facing different dangers and all sorts of stuff. And I felt that the fourth film did kind of felt like a good encore for the Toy Story franchise, giving Woody closure on his story and the story of Bo Peep, and I felt that was good. So now we've got Toy Story 5 on the way, and honestly, I don't really see what else they could do with that. Why don't you just end it there? I mean, Pixar did make it clear that after the fourth film, they wouldn't do any more sequels or prequels to their respective films, and yet they're already working on Inside Out 2, and as I said, Toy Story 5. And I would have loved to see more spin-offs. Lightyear wasn't the best spin-off in the world, I must admit, because it did change a bit too much. And I would have loved to see more holiday specials and short films, because all those were good, not brilliant, but good. And the thing about the fourth film is that Don Rickles, I think his name is, who voices Mr. Potato Head, died before the fourth film came out, and it was just because they had a lot of his voice lines in the archives, that they were able to use that for the film rather than focus on AI, which they could effectively do for most of the characters now, but it just wouldn't feel the same. I think AI is just not worth it. So overall, I think Pixar are making the wrong move in making a new Toy Story film after having four good films, 2 having open-ended endings, 1 and 2, and the latter 2 having sort of conclusive, this is the end, no more films kind of endings. And Lightyear just being its own thing. Not to mention also Buzz Lightyear Star Command, which is the first time they actually did do a story that's all about Buzz Lightyear and his world and all that. I'm guessing Disney and Pixar kind of forgot that existed. I mean, I know some of the Disney Channel content is frowned upon by the actual Disney family themselves. But there you go. That's their opinion. So yeah, that's how I feel about Toy Story. I think the franchise is great. I love it to bits. All the films that have been released so far, except for Lightyear, have been good. Lightyear would have been good had it be a bit more accurate to being a sort of 1995 film, because it does have some LGBTQ plus stuff in there, and I'm fairly convinced that at around that time it wouldn't have been as big as it is now, and would have probably not necessarily be frowned upon, but it wouldn't exactly have been allowed in mainstream stuff like it is today. Because there was a different time back in the 90s. I'm just trying to think if there's anything else to say about it. And also, you've seen that I've played a couple of the pics of the games with Toy Story in them on this channel already, and there's going to be a whole lot more to come in the future. And it's still a big franchise, not just for Pixar but for Disney as well. People still love it to bits. People remember all the lines. People like myself have the toys, which I've shown in previous videos. Well, not all the toys, but some of them. And yeah. So take Toy Story for what it is. Draw your own conclusions as to whether you think Toy Story 5 is necessary or not. I personally feel it's not necessary, but Disney being Disney, they don't really get the whole idea of they don't really sort of understand originality, hence why Pixar and their own animation studio don't really release too many stuff, because they're just trying to think of original ideas, but are just sucking at it. Hence why we get so many remakes, so many films based on different things, like their attractions and so forth, and Their strategy definitely needs to change, because it's all, no one's gonna be like forgetting Disney anytime soon. No one's gonna forget Disney. Basically, they've made a lot of great stuff. They've made a lot of bad stuff as well. But the thing is, if a studio keeps making stuff that is released too often and doesn't give much breathing room, you're not going to do too well. You're not going to get all your money back. You're not going to do too well. And I mean, as Matt Pat pointed out in his film theory about how Disney are doing things, Disney are just not giving much of their films breathing room and releasing an expensive film after expensive film. Anyway, enough about that. Going back to Toy Story. Great franchise, and whether Toy Story 5 feels necessary or not, I don't know if it's going to do as well as the other films. I mean, it's very rare for a film of any sort of caliber to get 100% on Rotten Tomatoes. A few, like the Toy Story films, have managed to get to that point. But there are people that don't like Toy Story 3 and 4, because they're both in the 90s era, but not quite 100. And lots of people don't like Lightyear, which is, I believe, the lowest rated film on Rotten Tomatoes. But yeah, that's just what I think. So Toy Story 5, just don't do it. Just feels unnecessary. And that's all I'm going to say on that. If you want to continue with the Toy Story franchise in any way, I'd say make spin-offs of Woody's Roundup Gang, because I would love to see that. Make another Lightyear film, maybe, but make it be a bit more like the Buzz Lightyear we know and love. And as for the other characters, well, I know the Potato Heads would be impossible because they are licensed characters, as are Barbie, but Barbie has her own film anyway. So, yeah. All right, I think I've covered it enough. So thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed the video, then please like, share, comment, and subscribe. See you in the next one. Peace to you all. And no matter what you go through, no matter what hardships you have in life and all that, remember, toys can be your friends as well, and you always have a friend in someone, at least. Life is not as bad as some people make it out to be. You can make friends in all sorts of weird and wacky places, even in places that you'd feel you'd never even make friends to begin with. So yeah, just enjoy life as much as you can. And I think that's the big message that Toy Story likes to do, and that's what I'm going to tell you now. Just enjoy life, make friends, don't let anybody control you, and definitely enjoy it as best you can, because you only have one life, so use it well. Alright, bye bye.
To infinity and beyond!